Husband mocks her mom's old fur coat. Then a hidden letter reveals his shocking secret. From my mom, all I inherited was her worn-out fur coat, while my sister got the spacious apartment. My husband irritably tossed the coat onto the floor, and from the torn pocket fell a letter that exposed his secret. You won't believe what happened next. But before we continue, please write in the comments where you're from and how old you are. Enjoy the story. Death always comes at the wrong time, even if the person has been ill for a long while. Emily stared at the closed coffin, drowning in flowers, and couldn't fully grasp that her mom was gone forever. Margaret Thompson had been more than just a mother to her. She was her best friend, her advisor, her rock. Now that rock had crumbled, leaving a gaping void behind. Beside her stood Victoria, her older sister. Victoria's face wore a mask of grief, but Emily sensed the falseness in her eyes. Victoria had always been envious and calculating, even as a child. Still, this wasn't the time for grudges or suspicions. They had to hold it together. The funeral passed in a haze. Faces of relatives, condolences, the memorial meal, all of it felt unreal, like it was happening to someone else. Emily mechanically responded to words of support, fighting back tears. She knew her mom wouldn't want to see her so weak. The day after the funeral, the notary gathered everyone in Margaret Thompson's apartment to read the will. Emily sat next to Daniel, her husband, feeling his hand on hers. He supported her as best he could, and it calmed her a little. The notary cleared his throat and began reading the will. In the quiet room, every word rang out loudly. The apartment in the city center, as expected, went to Victoria. Emily got her mother's old mink coat. Emily felt a wave of resentment spread through her chest. It wasn't that she had counted on the apartment, but still, did her mom really think she deserved only an old coat? A lump formed in her throat, and she barely held back the tears. Victoria, on the other hand, looked pleased. A faint smile flickered across her face, one that didn't escape Emily's notice. Well, so be it, Emily thought, trying not to show her feelings. Causing a scene now would be inappropriate. Daniel squeezed her hand tightly. Don't get upset, darling, he whispered in her ear. The important thing is we're together. Let her have the apartment. We're doing fine as it is. The odd joy in Daniel's voice struck Emily, as if he had known this would happen all along. She tried to brush off the thought. It was probably just her imagination. After the will was read, Victoria approached Emily and hugged her. Don't be offended, Emmy, she said with feigned sadness. You know how much I loved our apartment, but you can always come visit me. Emily nodded, unable to force out a word. She felt a wall growing between them, built of envy and dishonesty. That evening, back home, Emily took the old coat out of the closet. It smelled like her mom, her favorite perfume, medicines, and something indefinably familiar. Emily pressed the coat to herself and burst into tears. This was all that remained of her mom. Daniel entered the room and saw her crying. Oh, come on, silly, he said, hugging her. Getting so upset over some coat. Forget about it. The main thing is we have each other. He took the coat from her hands and hung it back in the closet. No need to divide anything, he muttered under his breath. Everything's fine as it is. Emily looked at him in confusion. What did he mean? Why was he so glad she only got the old coat? She tried to shake off the dark thoughts, but they kept creeping in. I'll keep this coat, Emily said to Daniel. It's a memory of Mom. I'll wear it every year. Daniel shrugged. Whatever you want, he replied indifferently. Emily stayed silent. She felt a chasm growing between them and knew she needed to figure out what was going on. Something wasn't right. Too many strange coincidences. Too much falseness in the words and actions of those closest to her. Several months after the funeral and the reading of the will, life in Emily and Daniel's apartment flowed on, though the atmosphere had changed. Emily tried not to show her hurt, busying herself with the house, work, trying to fill the emptiness left by her mother's death. The coat, the one from the will, hung in the closet, reminding her of maternal love but also of bitter injustice. Daniel, in contrast, seemed more animated and even irritable. He stayed late at work more often, citing urgent projects, and avoided talks about the inheritance. Emily thought he was hiding something, but she chalked it up to stress from his mother-in-law's death and his constant busyness. One evening, returning from work, Emily found Daniel in a highly agitated state. He was rummaging nervously through things in the closet. What's wrong? Emily asked, entering the room. Damn that thing. Your coat, Daniel snapped, hurling the fur garment into the corner. It's cluttering up the whole closet, just taking up space. Emily flinched at his sharpness. She'd never seen him so angry over an object, usually calm and reasonable. Now he was like a raging beast. "Don't you dare talk about Mom's thing like that," Emily protested, picking the coat up from the floor. "It's dear to me as a memory." "What memory?" Daniel waved it off. "A piece of junk that just collects dust. Better if she'd left something useful instead." He stopped short, cutting himself off, and looked away. Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" she asked suspiciously. Daniel stayed silent, just furrowing his brow harder. Emily felt a wave of anxiety rising in her chest. Something was off. Leaving the coat on the bed, Emily started on dinner. Daniel sat silently at the table, poking at his plate with a fork. The silence weighed heavy, and Emily couldn't take it. "Daniel, what's going on?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "Why are you acting like this?" "Everything's fine," he grumbled, not lifting his eyes. "Just tired." "No, it's not fine," Emily objected. "You've never been this angry. And this coat, why does it irritate you so much?" Daniel sighed heavily and finally looked at her. His eyes held a sense of doom. "Fine," he said. "You'd find out anyway." He told her about his financial problems, the debts that had piled up lately, how he'd hoped that after his mother-in-law's death, they'd get something to pay off the creditors. "I thought Victoria would share with us," Daniel confessed. "But you know her. She's greedy for money." Emily listened without interrupting, feeling everything inside her turn cold. Did he really think she'd believe this pathetic story? "And so what?" she asked when he finished. "You decided to take out your anger on Mom's coat?" "No, of course not," Daniel exclaimed. "I'm just upset." He fell silent, and Emily knew he was lying. She felt it with every fiber of her being. That night, while Daniel slept, Emily couldn't sleep. Doubts and suspicions tormented her. She tossed in bed, trying to understand what was happening. Finally, she got up and went to the closet where the coat hung. She took it in her hands and examined it closely. The coat was old but well made, sewn from quality fur. Mom had always cherished it, wearing it only on special occasions. Emily remembered how, as a child, she loved stroking the soft fur, feeling warmth and protection. Then her gaze fell on the torn pocket. She didn't remember it being like that. It seemed Daniel had damaged it when he threw the coat on the floor. Emily reached inside. There, deep in the pocket, she felt something hard. She pulled it out and saw an old yellowed envelope. On it, in crooked letters, was written, "For Emmy." Her heart raced. She recognized her mother's handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Unfolding the yellowed sheet, Emily began to read. The lines were written in uneven script, but each word cut into her memory like a whip. "My dear Emmy," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer alive. I've thought long about what to do and decided to write you the truth. The apartment I've saved for so long, I bequeath to you, my beloved daughter. You've always been kind and fair, and I want you to have your own home. I know Victoria might be offended, but I'm sure you'll find common ground with her. I also want to tell you that I have a copy of the will with my notary friend. If any problems arise, go to her. She'll help you sort everything out. I love you very much, my girl. Be happy. Your Mom." Emily finished the letter and froze, as if struck by lightning. The apartment. Mom had willed the apartment to her. That meant the will read after the funeral was fake. Pieces of the puzzle started fitting together in Emily's mind. Victoria and Daniel, they had conspired to deceive her and take the apartment. Victoria had always envied her, and Daniel had always been greedy for money. Emily recalled Daniel's strange joy when the will was read. She remembered his words about not needing to divide anything. Now she understood it was all a lie. He knew she wouldn't get anything. Emily felt a wave of anger and hurt rising in her chest. The people closest to her had betrayed her sister, and her husband. They had cheated her, deprived her of her inheritance, deprived her of her mother's love. But along with the anger, Emily felt a surge of strength. She wouldn't be a victim anymore. She would fight for justice. She would prove the will was forged and reclaim what was rightfully hers. The coat she held in her hands became a symbol of her mother's love and her determination to fight for the truth. She pressed it to herself and whispered. Emily put the letter back in the envelope and hid it in a safe place. Then she took an old photo of her mother from the closet and stared at her kind face for a long time. "I won't let you down, Mom," she whispered. "I'll get back what's rightfully mine, and I'll punish those who betrayed you and me." That night, Emily couldn't sleep for a long time. Thoughts swirled in her head, plans formed. She felt strong and determined, ready for any challenges. For the first time in ages, she felt she had a purpose in life. And that purpose was to achieve justice. Emily felt an icy rage building inside her. The betrayal by her closest people, her husband and sister, seemed unthinkable, a monstrous nightmare. But the letter from her mother, found in the lining of the old coat, was too real to dismiss. It held the truth they had hidden from her so carefully. Now, armed with this truth, she had to act. First, Emily decided to meet with her mother's notary friend mentioned in the letter. Rebecca, that was her name, worked in a small office in a quiet part of the city. Emily called her, introducing herself as a distant relative, and asked for an urgent meeting on important business. Rebecca, a bit surprised but kind, agreed to see her the next day. The whole evening, Emily spent in anxious anticipation. She ran through possible scenarios in her mind, preparing for any questions. Most of all, she feared Rebecca wouldn't confirm the letter's authenticity, or would say she knew nothing about the will. But there was no turning back. Too much was at stake. The next morning, gathering her courage, Emily headed to the notary's office. The small, cozy space with high ceilings and antique furniture created an atmosphere of calm and reliability. Rebecca greeted her with a welcoming smile. She was an elderly woman with kind eyes and soft features. She exuded wisdom and experience that inspired trust. "Hello, Emily, right?" Rebecca said, inviting her to sit in a chair. "How can I help you?" Emily took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Rebecca, I wanted to talk to you about my mother, Margaret Thompson's will. She passed away a few months ago, and some questions have come up." Rebecca listened attentively without interrupting. Emily told her about the will, where the apartment went to her sister Victoria, and she got only the old coat. She mentioned the letter found in the coat, where her mother claimed the apartment was meant for her. Rebecca frowned. "That's very strange," she murmured. "I remember Margaret Thompson. We were good friends. She always said she wanted her apartment to go to Emily." Emily felt a faint hope. "Can you confirm that?" Rebecca nodded. "Yes, of course. I should have a copy of her real will. Let me check." She stood and went to a large cabinet filled with folders and documents. She rummaged through them for a while until she pulled out the right folder. She opened it and studied the contents carefully. "Here it is," she exclaimed, handing Emily a copy of the will. "As I thought, it clearly states the apartment is bequeathed to Emily." Emily took the document with trembling hands. In the lines written in her mother's familiar handwriting, there was no doubt. The apartment was indeed meant for her. But how? Emily whispered, feeling a wave of indignation rise in her chest. "Why did the notary read a different will?" Rebecca sighed. "I'm afraid there was foul play. Someone probably forged the will and presented it to the notary." Emily recalled Daniel's strange joy after the will, reading, "Victoria's hypocritical sympathy." Everything was falling into place. "Rebecca," Emily said, trying not to show her excitement, "do you remember who handled the will formalities after my mother's death?" Rebecca thought for a moment. "I remember a young woman came, introducing herself as your sister Victoria. She brought all the necessary documents. It seems there was your notarized consent to give the apartment to your sister." Emily went cold. "But I never signed any such papers. It's a forgery." Rebecca nodded. "I suspected as much. Handwriting can be faked. The notary who certified the consent was probably in on it." "And do you know?" Emily asked. "Who could have helped Victoria in this?" Rebecca hesitated a bit, then said quietly, "I heard Victoria was having some affair with your husband Daniel. Maybe he's involved too." Emily felt the world crumbling around her. Betrayal by her husband, her sister, it was too cruel, too unbearable. "Thank you, Rebecca," Emily said, barely holding back tears. "You've helped me so much." She left the notary's office in a daze. One thought pulsed in her head. "They deceived me, they betrayed me, but I won't let them get away with it." At home, trying not to draw Daniel's attention, Emily pulled all the inheritance documents from the closet. She studied them carefully, comparing signatures, dates, seals. With each new piece of evidence, her confidence in her rightness grew. Emily remembered Rebecca's words about the affair between Victoria and Daniel. It all formed a logical picture. Victoria had offered Daniel money for help in the deception, and he, driven by greed, had agreed to everything. That same evening, gathering all the evidence, the copy of the real will, Victoria's bank statements, her mother's letter, Emily went to a lawyer. She told him her story, holding back no details. The lawyer, an experienced and insightful man, listened carefully. "You have very strong evidence," he said. "We can file a lawsuit to declare the will invalid and hold Victoria and Daniel accountable for fraud." Emily nodded. "I want them to answer for everything. I want justice." The lawyer smiled. "Then we'll fight to the end." For the first time in a long while, Emily felt hope. Hope that truth would prevail and the betrayers would be punished. Her mother's coat, a symbol of love and justice, gave her strength and confidence. She knew she wouldn't be alone in this fight. Her mother would always be with her, supporting and guiding her. She left the lawyer's office with a firm resolve to achieve the truth. A long and difficult struggle lay ahead, but she was ready for it. She was no longer the passive, weak woman she had been before. The betrayal by her loved ones had hardened her character, making her stronger and more determined. Now she was prepared to do anything to defend her honor and her mother's memory. The court investigation lasted several weeks, filled with agonizing waiting for Emily. Each day seemed endless, as hope battled fear that truth might not win. Daniel, sensing the inevitable, became irritable and withdrawn. He avoided Emily, hid his eyes as if ashamed, though he didn't openly admit his guilt. Victoria, on the contrary, acted defiantly, calling Emily, threatening her, trying to convince her to withdraw the claim, promising payoffs. Emily remained unyielding. Her resolve strengthened every day, fueled by memories of her mother and the desire to restore justice. Finally, news came that the investigation was complete. With her heart pounding, Emily went to court, where her lawyer awaited. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Daniel and Victoria sat on opposite sides from her. Their faces showed a mix of fear and malice. Emily's lawyer, confident in success, calmly explained the case to the court, presenting the evidence clearly and precisely. "Your Honor," he said, "the documents we've submitted, particularly the handwriting expert's conclusions, unequivocally show that the signature on the inheritance waiver, supposedly Emily's, is forged. Moreover, the testimony of Rebecca, a notary with years of experience, confirms the existence of a will where the apartment was bequeathed specifically to Emily. We have irrefutable proof of a conspiracy between the defendants aimed at illegally seizing the deceased's property." After Emily's lawyer spoke, the floor went to Victoria and Daniel's lawyer. He tried to challenge the expert results, citing inaccuracies and suggesting a re-examination. But his arguments were weak and unconvincing. It became clear the defense had no solid grounds. The climax arrived, the announcement of the court's decision. Silence fell over the room. Only the quickened breathing of those present could be heard. The judge, with a serious expression, read the verdict. The court rules to declare invalid the inheritance waiver signed in Emily's name, to recognize Emily's ownership of the apartment at the address, to order Victoria and Daniel to return the illegally obtained property, to refer the case to investigative authorities for criminal proceedings on fraud and document forgery. Emily felt tears welling up, tears of relief, joy, and at the same time bitterness. Justice had triumphed. The truth had come out. The apartment that was rightfully hers was returning to her possession, but the price paid for it was too high. The betrayal by her closest people had left a deep wound in her heart. Noise erupted in the courtroom. Victoria jumped up and lunged at Emily with a scream. "You'll regret this. You've ruined our lives. Why do you need that apartment? Are money more important than family?" Emily, not expecting such a reaction, recoiled. She looked at her sister with pain and disappointment. There was no remorse in Victoria's eyes, only malice and hatred. "Victoria," Emily replied quietly, "it's not about the apartment, it's about the truth, about how you and Daniel betrayed me and our mother's memory. You thought only of money, forgetting honor and conscience." Daniel stood silently aside, head bowed. He looked lost and crushed. Regret showed in his eyes, but it was too late. After the court, Emily didn't linger. She stepped outside, breathed the fresh air, and felt the burden that had weighed on her for months gradually lift. Her lawyer congratulated her on the victory and assured her that all necessary documents for transferring the apartment would be processed soon. A few days later, Emily received the keys to the apartment. She stood at the threshold, hesitating to enter. She remembered her mother, her kind eyes, her gentle hands. She recalled her childhood in these walls, happy moments, family holidays. Crossing the threshold, Emily felt at home. She inspected the rooms, touched the old things that still held the warmth of her mother's hands. The apartment was quiet and empty, but the air was filled with memories of the past. Emily decided to start a new life. She renovated, updated the furniture, created a cozy and comfortable space. She didn't want this apartment to remind her of betrayal and pain. She wanted it to become a symbol of her new life, filled with happiness, love, and harmony. Emily divorced Daniel. She couldn't forgive his betrayal. She understood that love couldn't exist without trust, and trust was shattered forever. Victoria tried to contact Emily, begging forgiveness, pleading for help, but Emily remained firm. She couldn't forget how her sister had deceived her, how she tried to deprive her of her inheritance. She couldn't forgive such baseness. In the evening, sitting in her chair, Emily held the old coat in her hands. She pressed it to herself, feeling the warmth of her mother's love. The coat had become a symbol of justice and truth triumphing over betrayal and lies. Emily knew a long and difficult path lay ahead. She had to heal her emotional wounds, learn to trust people again, build a new life, but she was ready for these trials. She knew she had the strength and will to overcome all difficulties and become happy. Criminal cases were opened against Victoria and Daniel. They were charged with fraud and document forgery. The court found them guilty and sentenced them to probation. Their alliance fell apart. They were left with nothing, consumed by envy and regret. Emily moved into her apartment. She felt justice had prevailed. She stood by the window, looking at the night city, and thought of her mother. She knew her mother would be proud of her. All right, thanks for listening.